And lights,
Lights, camera, fashion.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dixie Dixon.
Oh, thank you so much. Such a deeply humbling experience to be here. This is such an amazing show. Are you guys having a total blast at CES? Yes? Oh, good. I am too. Gosh, it's such a cool experience. So I would love to give you guys just a little bit of a background. When I was 12 years old, I was given my first camera, the Nikon FG. It was a film camera. And my dad gave me that camera. I was an only child, and I don't think he had any clue what I would end up doing with that camera in my future. At 16, I got my first big break. I was shooting Little League photography, so I'd literally be up every single weekend shooting all of the sports teams for a whopping $10 an hour. At 17, I ended up joining the yearbook staff, and my image ended up making the cover of the yearbook. So for me, that was the moment where I decided I wanted to embark on this crazy photography adventure of a lifetime. There was no turning back. No longer was I going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a pediatrician, anything remotely predictable. I was going to embark on this crazy photography adventure of a lifetime. At 18, I went off to college, and I actually majored in business. I figured out that I really needed to know the business side of things in order to actually make a living at photography, and that business side has really played into a lot of the things that I'm doing in addition to photography. At 20, I studied abroad with a world-renowned fashion photographer. That's really and truly when I fell in love with the beauty and the dreamlike quality of fashion photography. And I just absolutely love those moments of being able to capture the model's expressions along with the fashion and bringing those together with the light and the color. And that is really ultimately my ultimate passion. And to me, photography truly is the outward expression of inner significance. I think that you can really showcase your soul as a photographer in your images, and that's really what's so much fun about it. There's no boundaries, there's no rules, it's just pure self-expression. And when you can figure out your own personality and bring them out in your images, it's amazing what can come to life. I love using natural light. It's the light that was made for us. This was shot in Brazil. That's one of my absolute favorite locations. And believe it or not, these models didn't speak English at all. So directing them was a little bit of a challenge. I had to use a lot of hand gestures and things like that in order to get them to, create the right look and the right mood in the images. And I love natural light. How many of you guys love natural light in photography? Oh, it's like the most favorite for me because it really brings out the beauty of the model's skin and the environment. This was actually overcast on this day, and then we kind of just amped up the lighting just a little bit by adding a little bit of a strobe. So I'm always working with natural light and then making it look even better is what I do in fashion photography. And a lot of times, I like to create movement. So for instance, we don't have a fan here, blowing the gown, but I'll have my assistant grab the bottom of the dress and throw it in the air and count to 3, and that's when I capture that image when it's just moving in the air, so you get that cool movement in the image. So we're doing that a lot in fashion photography. This was shot much the same way. The wardrobe stylist grabbed the bottom of this 20-foot train and is just shaking it up and down to create that movement. So that's one of the kind of secrets of fashion photography, to create that movement. And then just to give you guys a little bit of a background, I also have gotten into directing over the past couple of years. I love this transition from still to video because you can take so much as what you've learned as a still photographer into the video side of things. And I already love lighting with constant light, so you get to add the addition of sound. Sound is such a huge addition to, the moving images that you're able to create. So I've been directing different TV commercials and doing a lot of different video work. So I'd love to show you guys a quick reel, and then we'll get into more about fashion photography.
Kick the dust off your back, don't look back. 'Cause you were made for this. You can feel it inside your bones. You were made for this, and it's time you let the world know who you are, what you know, what's happening right now. So run, run, it's a new day.
So that's kind of just a compilation of lots of different projects and things like that. And my actual first real break in the industry, believe it or not, was shooting for a TV show. I don't know if you guys have heard of Access Television. So they were originally HDNet, and they had a docu-reality travel show where I was able to be the still photographer for that TV show. And it ran about 17 seasons, so that was my first time getting to work on set. I can remember shaking in my boots, as I'm trying to create these still images, because I'd never been on set before. It was such a cool experience, and never would I have ever thought that I'd be shooting swimsuit models for that particular show. But it was a really neat experience to get people out of their comfort zone and really capture the beautiful essence of whoever it is I was shooting. And that connection is just so huge, especially in swimwear photography. You can see if the model was comfortable when you're photographing by their eyes. You can instantly see if they were comfortable, so they can express their personality. And I think that's what I really learned on shooting swimwear photography for this show, because they would basically do a photo shoot in every location that we went to. So they would travel the island, they'd showcase the island, and then in every different place we did a photo shoot. So it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of different locations. I went to Miami, Puerto Rico, Ibiza, Spain was one of the coolest places that we got to go, and it was all filmed on the TV show. So that kind of led to a lot of different fashion work after that. So this is for a designer named Nikon. She's an incredible designer based out of Dallas, and capturing that beautiful movement. So I shoot not only fashion photography, I shoot a lot of commercial work for catalogs, lots of different stuff. This was for a shoe company named Florsheim Shoes, and just capturing the models in their element. This was actually my first big campaign. There was 20 people on set. Just a really fun experience. And then also shooting different hair clients. This is called macadamia oil, and you really have to learn how to light hair so you can capture that beautiful texture. We actually used a big parabolic light source right behind me, and I basically stand in front of it, and it just kind of wraps around the models' faces, which is absolutely beautiful. I mean, this image, it's so funny. Everyone asks why I shoot Nikon. I've been shooting Nikon my entire career, but can you guys see the detail that comes out of the combination between these cameras and these lenses? I mean, that's zoomed in 100%, and on this screen, it is insane to me, the kind of detail that comes out of these cameras. This was actually shot with the Nikon D850, which I absolutely love that camera. I'm also shooting with the Z7 and Z6 a ton now that it came out. So it's just really fun opportunity to get to work with people. And I always say, teamwork makes the dream work. And the reason is, I think when you're surrounded by people that are creative and they're positive, they bring out the best in you so that you can then bring out the best in your images. So I work with a steady crew of people, of hair and makeup, to wardrobe, to models, to stylists. All these people come together to create all these images. And when you're working with a crew, it makes it really fun because they can really inspire you creatively to bring out the best in your work. So it's a lot of moving pieces and things like that. And this is actually a time-lapse shot in camera with the new Nikon. So you can really see how many moving parts there is on every different shoot that we do. It's a lot of fun. So I do a lot of lifestyle work as well for different brands. This was obviously for Nikon. And believe it or not, this dog's name was Dixie. It was meant to be. She showed up on set. Literally, I had no idea that she would show up with her own outfits and goggles for the fashion shoot. Believe it or not, she actually walks in dog fashion shows. I had no idea there was such a thing. So it was pretty amazing. And this was a billboard shoot that I did. This was actually for an energy company. This is all commercial work, so I don't just shoot fashion, but I try to bring that sort of fashion element into all the different shoots that I'm doing. This, believe it or not, is called Selfina. It was for cellulite therapy. So you got to make it look cool as a fashion photographer. So obviously they wanted to use this bright red chair. This is all pretty basic studio work, but it's fun because it's commercial and it's all for a brand. So here's the behind the scenes video from this particular shoot. This is really fun.
I'm gonna do my thing.
So on most of the shoots that I'm doing, the client is now wanting not only the stills, but the video as well, because the video drives so much traffic to the stills that are created. So it ends up being the best of both worlds. So then I can now have a video to promote on my website, and now the brand can also promote the behind-the-scenes film and what they do on their website. So it ends up being a really great, marketing tool. So how many of you guys do video? A lot of you? If you guys, awesome. Yeah, it's such an amazing tool, and I'm getting more and more into it. So much fun. So just here's a quick shot of my gear bag. I need to update this because it does not have the Z6 and Z7 on it yet, but I'm primarily a prime lens shooter. I love the fixed focal length lens because I get to be my own walking zoom, and I feel like it makes me more creative when I shoot. So one of my favorite lenses is the 105, like we talked about earlier in the panel, but I always use prime lenses. I actually don't even own any zooms, believe it or not. I just love the look of the primes. They're just so beautiful. And then I always bring hats. I always have to have a hat on when I shoot. I don't know why that is. I feel more creative when I have a hat on. So always when I'm photographing, that is like my photo shoot uniform. So now I'm shooting primarily with the Z7, and I am obsessed with this camera. I don't know if you guys have shot with it yet. It is a whole new experience to shooting, and I'll tell you guys why, is that you can immediately see in camera in the viewfinder exactly what it's going to look like when you click the shutter. And so you don't have that with DSLR. With mirrorless cameras, now you can see everything in that viewfinder before you even click it. And that is a huge opportunity for us as photographers, especially if you're learning photography. You can see when you instantly make an adjustment like aperture or shutter speed, what it does in camera before you even take the image. So that really allows us as photographers to really perfect everything before you take the shot. So it's just an incredible tool. This was actually shot with the Z6. This was my first time using the Z6, and I was just blown away with how the light was coming through the stained glass window. And this is all pretty much in camera, just simple stuff here. Natural light, beautiful image. I believe I shot this with the, I want to say the 58mm lens, and it just creates that beautiful look in the image. So these use a lot of complementary colors, that blue and that orange. So I use a lot of complementary colors in my work. Basically, complementary colors are across from each other on the color wheel. So for instance, like in those images, I used the blue and that orangey kind of color from the stained glass window come together really nicely because they're complementary. So you can use these different color combinations in your work, and it's going to make your images a lot more three-dimensional. I also use these a lot in behind-the-scenes films and filmmaking as well. You can use a really nice color palette, and really kind of takes it to the next level. So again, orange and blue, I use that all the time. These are the basic settings that I use, especially for portraits. Like I said, I love black and whites. And I tend to shoot pretty wide open at like f1.8, sometimes 1.4. And you can really create a really nice look where it draws more emphasis to the models that you're shooting and then kind of blurs out the background a little bit. These models are really funny. This model I don't think liked this one. So we got this kind of funny connection with these two models for this whole shoot. It's really funny. These are both shot with a Z6 camera. You can see how that 105mm just draws all your emphasis to the subject and then blurs that background really beautifully. So I love that for that reason. Your style is really something that exists within you. You don't have to go out in search of your style. It already exists within you. And the more that you get to know yourself as a person, as a human being, the more that you're going to be able to express your soul in your images. So that's really the learning process, is just getting to know yourself more in order to bring out your personality in all of the pictures. This is Kathy Ireland. She's an iconic swimsuit supermodel. Was able to shoot some beautiful portraits of her with the Nikon camera about a year back. We also did a gallery show with her. And these are all just really beautiful black and white images that I was able to capture of her. This was a recent aviation shoot that we did with the Z6 camera. I love these sort of vintage-inspired shoots because they just have a really fun, beautiful mood about them. And for instance, the female model always is in hair and makeup for like 2 hours before every production. So I ended up shooting the guy model first for those 2 hours while the girl is getting ready. So we take advantage of that time because it just takes so much time in hair and makeup. So these were some really fun aviation-inspired shots. And then obviously, the female model becomes ready, then we create some really fun couple shots. This is all natural light, all created in camera, just beautiful black and whites. There was actually actually a beautiful opening in this garage where the natural light was pouring in from the front and then also from the back. So it was a really beautiful setup, especially with the pavement because it was so shiny. A lot of times I'll shoot and we'll actually hose down the floor so it gets reflective and it looks really neat in the images. So I love black and whites. This is the very end of the day. The whole crew is packing up, and I see this beautiful sunset. So I had to obviously capture this light. I feel like sometimes I get some of my best shots when the whole crew is packing up and ready to go, and I'm still shooting because I just get so into it. Your vision is something you really have to consider. I always do a vision board before every single shoot, from the looks that I want to do, the lighting, the hair and makeup, the wardrobe, because it helps everyone get on the same page before a shoot. And that's how you create those images. This is a recent campaign for a hospital, a woman's hospital. They wanted very pastel looks as far as the clothing and things like that. And so these ran on billboards, actually. And it was a really fun experience getting to work with them. Believe it or not, she's actually not pregnant. This is all smoke and mirrors. She's actually wearing a little, I don't know what you call that, a pillow essentially here to make it appear like she's, you know, a cute little pregnant girl. So we created that, and she's actually a good friend of mine. She ended up being one of the models for this particular shoot. So for this hospital, they needed a lot of different content. They used this online as well as in billboards. It was a really interesting shoot. I tend to do a lot of backlight in my imagery. How many of you guys love backlight? Yes! Oh, it's so pretty. I feel like it's just amazing on women because you get that beautiful hair light and you bounce back that light into their face and it just really comes to life really beautifully. These are all natural light. All of you guys can do this. Honestly, it's just capturing that light and shooting wide open is really the key. And a lot of times I'll use a reflector and just bounce it back into the model's face to create that image. So these are some nice lingerie shots that I did. This was at El Matador Beach. How many of you guys have been to El Matador? Any of you? It's an amazing location, really great lighting, really beautiful light comes through. It's really warm and soft, so it creates this really nice look. Lens selection is really big, and it took me a while to learn this. But basically, for headshots, I always use longer lenses because it really has a beautiful compression effect. So a lot of times you can see how this wide angle is not as flattering on the model's face. So you all of a sudden use an 85 and you start getting a really beautiful image, and then an even more long image, or lens, should I say, you end up getting a lot more beautiful look to the image, and their face has this compression effect, which brings it to life. So you can see here, this is shot with a long lens, and you can see it's backlit by the sun, front lit with the reflector, and that long lens just draws a lot more emphasis into the model's face, and it really has this nice compression effect. So that's why I use the long lenses. And then sometimes you get really great moments where the model is just dying laughing, and those are always some of the best shots. Really fun to work with. So you can see how the lens choice can really make such a huge difference. The long lens in the center, I used an 85 here. And then for the full length, I like to use a 50 millimeter. Keep it pretty simple. So that's really fun. And then you obviously always want to have that background blurred out. Well, you don't always, but I particularly like it because it really draws so much more emphasis to your subject and just really makes them look a lot more beautiful. So that tends to be the way that I shoot in fashion photography. It's such a fun adventure. I've been doing a ton of work with the Z7. I was so crazy excited to get to shoot with the prototype a few months ago before it was released. As a photographer, that is one of the most amazing experiences. Sometimes I have to pinch myself when these things happen. So obviously, I wanted to bring out the beauty of what this camera is able to capture. This was all shot in studio, the first part of the image, and you know, I ended up finding these amazing outfits on Etsy. This hat was actually a cool hat that I found on Etsy, and I'm always looking on eBay and these different sources to find these different props, and it really kind of creates a fun effect. But this is all natural light. This is shot with a new Nikon 35 millimeter lens in the Z7. And what's amazing about this camera is mirrorless. It's a lot lighter than all of the other cameras that I'm used to working with. So traveling around, it makes it a lot easier. It doesn't kill my back, if that makes sense. Really nice to work with. These are all paper dresses that we had constructed for this particular shoot. Believe it or not, they actually came in flat pieces. We had no idea they were going to come like this, so we had to pin them around the model and sort of makeshift and make them look cool. But they ended up really looking neat in all of the images. So these are just literally paper pieces. And the background kind of has this cool blue type of look. The new Z7 also has pinpoint focus. So if you're shooting beauty, you can really fine-tune and focus in on the eyes really well. It's really, really helpful when you're shooting beauty photography. And obviously capturing the model in her element. You can also shoot square format, which is a really fun tool. So I love using these for social media and things like that. It's extremely important. And then obviously I love animals. I'm always trying to add animals to my images because they just add another element to the image. And so we ended up using 3 beautiful poodles for this particular shot. And then this was also a natural light image that I shot with some nice negative space. I like to have a lot of negative space as well, so that the client can then put text next to the image and use their own copy. And this is 100% zoomed in. Look at the detail in this image. It just blows my mind. So I've really, really enjoyed working with the Z7. And so basically with this type of portrait, this is also when the models were all packing up, the crew is ready to leave, and I just had to get this last portrait of this particular model. So basically my back is to the window, and then I'm shooting into the model, and that light is just wrapping around her face so beautifully, and you end up with this kind of shot. So it's just so much fun to work with. Location, such a huge part of fashion photography. I found this amazing location in Mejia, Texas. And I'm sure none of you guys have heard of this location. It's basically an old abandoned building. We had to sign huge waivers in order to get into this location. And it was just such a funny experience because, you know, there was holes in the floor everywhere, and these models are in these beautiful gowns trying to, you know, walk up these stairs. And it was just so funny because it's amazing the locations that we find in order to create fashion photography. It's sort of that juxtaposition between an abandoned building and a beautiful dress really photographs amazingly. So this was one of the shots that we did. And she's actually, it's extremely hot in Texas. It's like 110 degrees in this location. So she's always standing near the fans. So we ended up using that as part of the shot. Really fun to work with. And this was testing the 9 frames per second that the Z7 does. So you can really capture the movement of the dress. And that's really fun in fashion photography, is just that movement. Again, she's standing near a fan. Really hot in Texas. We always have to have fans on set. It's really important. This was one of my absolute favorite images. You can see this enlarged in the booth. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell you image quality, I don't know what does. It's incredible that you can just enlarge these images to be life-size or room-size. But the texture on this wall was absolutely amazing. So I ended up kind of creating a look where that was almost like a map, and she was sort of this military-style fashion model in the frame. So this was just such a fun shoot. And then there in one room, they had this beautiful stack of stairs. And so I was like, how do we use this effectively? So we ended up getting out a fog machine and creating this kind of interesting mood with the location. And that's what I love about fashion photography. There really are no rules. It's just pure self-expression. And then the very last shot of the day was this amazing library spot. All my crew was exhausted. They were ready to go. And we had to get this particular shot because it was kind of a Harry Potter theme with all the colors and the books. And ended up being such a neat shoot because the fog machine just brought in those rays of light. This is all natural light shot in camera. I did not add that in post-production. So when you add that hazer, that fog machine, it really brings in those streaks of lighting. So I'm always using those. And we did a couple different variations, but that other one was my particular favorite. So much fun. So really, fashion photography, it can be natural light, it can be strobe. It really depends on what your vision is. And we tested this camera through all of the paces. You know, in natural lighting, I'm in Texas. We have to do a fun Western-style fashion shoot. And then, believe it or not, they had miniature donkeys. We had to work with those because they're just precious. And so we ended up capturing a nice images with this kind of lens flare look, but what's amazing to me is it has no chromatic aberration like most of the cameras. You don't get that sort of line. this camera just captures such depth and such detail, even with that backlight where a lot of cameras struggle. So I was pretty blown away with how that was. And it was cool how the model really bonded with all the animals on set. You know, some models are super scared of animals, but this particular model really had a connection with the animals, so I was able to capture that in the images. So this was actually a 3-day shoot that we did, and it was nonstop. I mean, I'm talking, these are probably 14-hour days that we spent photographing this, because when I get shooting, it is very hard for me to stop myself because I'm so in the zone. I almost have to be cut off from shooting because I'm just having so much fun. Because that is why I do what I do. Never am I ever more present than I am when I'm photographing people. And that's really what life's all about, is being present and fully engaged in that moment. And that is why I love fashion photography so much. It's just such a fun adventure. So I'd love to show you guys the behind-the-scenes film from this particular shoot. It was just such a fun adventure. Such a fun shoot. So thank you guys. I would encourage you guys to go out, shoot what you love. Life is so short. You might as well be doing something that you absolutely love. And thank you guys so much for listening. You guys have been so awesome today. I'm so grateful to be here. Hope you guys have an amazing rest of your show. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dixie Dixon. So we're going to transition into another